Hello, everyone. I'm Janet Lorin. I'm a higher ed finance reporter here at Bloomberg. You heard me this morning, and it's my pleasure to be here with Mike Harrity, athletic director at Dartmouth. So let's set the stage. We heard earlier today about athletic directors paying their athletes to the tune of $20.5 million a year. We are now shifting to the Ivy League, where players are not paid. It's a very different financial model because financial aid is based on income and family income, and not on merit and not on your ability to play. In fact, you could show up at Dartmouth and on your first day decide not to play the sport you're recruited to. So can you set the stage for us? Why is it so different?
Yeah, in so many ways. But first, I just want to say thank you for having me and from Dartmouth here, and thank you to everybody coming here. I heard there was a lot of Ivy League graduates here. Are there any Dartmouth graduates here in the room today? I was told it was VIP, but apparently not too VIP. There's not a Dartmouth grad. So yeah, Burn. That's right. It is really different. You know, I've had the good fortune to work at Power 4 institutions, University of Notre Dame for nearly 8.5 years, and the way we view it is you hit on it. Really central to the way we think about it is three things: the primacy of academics, number one. In athletics, the financial aid is all need-based. So just as you said, it's not based on athletic ability. The person can come and quit a day in, a year in, and they still retain their financial aid package. And then, as we think about the bigger picture of it, it's really broad-based sport, offerings. And I think that's something that a lot of my colleagues are thinking about. You heard that earlier on the panel. And that's really central to it because at our core, we view athletics as an educational endeavor. It's an extension of Dartmouth College's mission. And the classrooms just happen to be stadiums and tracks and pools. And we consider our coaches coach educators. So it's really, in this time, we see a lot of opportunity at this time. And I know we'll get more into that as we go on.
So we've talked a little bit in the earlier conference, actually quite a lot, about NIL, image and likeness, settlements. As we talked about, the Ivy League is not participating in those settlements, so they're not paying players. So what are the rules for NIL in the Ivy League? Do you have to approve or attest to anything?
Yeah, first and foremost, our presidents of the 8 institutions have made it clear that we believe in true name, image, and likeness. What that is just as any student would have access to, a varsity student athlete can have a sports camp in their hometown where they're teaching their sports skills. Somebody with an entrepreneurial spirit can start their own company and so on. That's real name, image, and likeness. Pay for play is not that, and our presidents have made it clear that we are not. It's against our values and our principles to participate in pay for play. So. Some of the safeguards, we've been thinking a lot about this. I've been the AD at Dartmouth for 3 years, and it's certainly been a hot topic amongst when the athletic directors get together. And without getting into all the details, because it's always evolving, that rule, but essentially I'm signing an attestation as the athletic director to say that any money that's directed through true NIL is in no way directed, either indirectly or directly at any of our institutional staff members or coaches' direction. So you have that top point guard, you have that top quarterback that you really want. They can have an NIL deal, again, that real NIL deal as I just described, but it's not an inducement for recruiting, or if somebody wants to go in the transfer portal, it's not something to retain. It's really the spirit of it. We talk a lot about that. Like we can have, the rules are only as good as the integrity of those who are following it. And we talk a lot as EDs about the need to adhere to our values in the Ivy League and again, adhere to the presidential directive to that pay for play is not our model. And I'll add, we've always been different. The Ivy League, like you talked about the financial aid, at a time where scholarships were offered across the country for decades upon decades. It's all need-based financial aid in the Ivy League. So we've always been different. This is just another layer of difference.
And what is the limit for what you have to attest to?
Yeah, so it's really any deal, but we also see analyze and evaluate every deal $2,000 and above. So the Ivy League has been keeping records for the past few years since NIL became, permissible in the NCAA landscape.
So that figure that UCLA mentioned of $5 million, very different from
It's
what
a
you
little
guys are
different.
doing.
Yeah, it's a little different.
So what's the downstream impact if there's potentially cuts in other programs? Do you benefit from, say, Olympic sports, skiing, other things? Talk a little bit about the downstream impact.
Yeah, we see a lot of opportunity there, and we're already realizing some of that from our coaches telling us that and you had some of my colleagues, across the country, Power 4 institutions on that panel earlier, is that the reality is that there's a de-emphasis of the whatever those sports are designated. Typically, they're both men's and women's basketball, football, and there might be a fourth or fifth sport. This morning, women's volleyball was named, I think, by Ohio State. And what's happening there is that, it's always happened at that level. There's always been a differentiation or tiering at the Power 4 level, where the investments are made. That's coaches' salaries, budget, so on, staffing. But now you have presidents and chancellors coming out publicly saying, our reality is that we want to have a broad-based program. We're not going to cut sports, but we're going to invest in these 4, 5, 6 sports, and the rest will be rendered essentially club. And when that happens, that means a reduction in scholarship offerings, perhaps reductions in roster size. Well, we're there. Now the pool has increased for us. So Nina King was here earlier. There was a sport that there was a young man going to compete there, was told that he didn't have that opportunity anymore. And who they called us. And we're excited about that because we have 35 varsity sports. We are not cutting sports. We are maintaining that. It's very important and central to who we are, and we will reap the benefit. And now our coaches, and we talk a lot about this as a true advantage and opportunity for us to capitalize on. So
what kind of NIL deals are your students getting? Maybe not like what Arch Manning is getting, but describe what they're doing. Social media posts, things like that.
Yeah, it's a mix. And again, this has been the case since it's been rendered permissible. It's the sports camp. It's the back in the hometown or locally, just using their name to say, hey, I'm a softball pitcher at a Division I level. I'm an all Ivy League participant, and I can teach you how to build your pitching skills, and using their name, image, and likeness. It's social media posts. It's the offensive line getting a deal at the local pizza place. It's those kinds of places, which again, we are very supportive of real NIL.
So let's talk a little bit about labor. Last year, the men's basketball team voted 13-2 to unionize, and the school said it would not negotiate and said we are dealing with students, not employees, and said we would take this issue to the Supreme Court. So earlier this year, they pulled back on that. But what happened? Tell us about that from your perspective.
Yeah, first I'll tell you, if you would have told me in July of 2022 when I started that job that Dartmouth men's basketball would be the first, collegiate Division I athletics team to vote to unionize, I don't know what I would have told you, but I would have thought you were crazy. That is so for so many reasons. Dartmouth has a long history of supporting unions, including student worker unions. Let me first say that. But as I said earlier, we view the athletics endeavor first and foremost at its core as educational in nature. There are certainly examples, perhaps you talked to ADs earlier today, that have athletic departments where revenue, driving revenue is one of the highest priorities. That's not our model. And so, as President Sion Beilock has said in op-eds nationally, and that we work very closely together, is that we believe and support unions. Our student athletes are not employees, and we'll go all the way to the Supreme Court to show that. What ended up happening is they withdrew their effort, the unionization effort. It was the best, one of the best New Year's Eve presents ever, and the team, I'll add, went on to an Ivy League season, which was the most successful Ivy League season in 25 years after that. And I was there cheering them on at the Ivy League tournament. I'll tell you, too, speaking to a couple student athletes without revealing too much of our conversations post-withdrawal, it was really fascinating because, first and foremost, again, we're an educational institution. They learned a lot through that. They learned a lot by working together, by working with the union, reflecting on, is this who we are? Is this really, how important is this to? And I think that's a win. I think a lot of growth, personal growth, came from the experience for everybody all around. But I expect it, we'll see. how it continues to unfold. And there's some activity in DC around obviously student athletes as employees.
Yes, the SCORE Act has been introduced in Congress that specifically says that students are not employees. Any thoughts on that?
Yes, I agree.
So we talked a little bit about Olympic sports earlier this morning, something of a concern about that UCLA has. What about Olympic sports at Dartmouth? Talk about the history there.
Yeah, one of my favorite nuggets is that there's never been a Winter Olympics without a Dartmouth student athlete, current or former. Isn't that cool? That's pretty amazing. We take it really seriously. Again, we see the opportunity really in this current landscape, as I just outlined in a previous answer, and also broad-based sports sponsorship is very, very important to us. Our executive director of the Ivy League, Robin Harris, was recently named to the USOPC board. I think it's paramount. It's incredible that she'll have a voice in that room. And yeah, I think I'm worried about it nationally, though. I'm really worried about it because of the elements that I highlighted earlier. I think the educational value of just participating in sport at the Division I level is transformational, and we hold true to that, as do my 7 Ivy peers.
So you came from some really big-time sport programs, Notre Dame, West Point. Talk a little bit about the difference between that and Ivy League sports, even though you're all Division I.
I would say there's actually more similarities than differences. You know, again, I've been so fortunate, 3 really distinct institutions, and that's something I've been really fortunate to be a part of that and the learning that occurs there. I think how it's different is certainly at Notre Dame, Jack Swarbrick was the director of athletics when I was there, great friend and mentor, and you know, the things, he is incredibly one of the brightest strategic minds in college athletics. He has since stepped down now and retired, but we were talking about what was coming, all the things you've talked about today, in like 2015 in our executive team meetings, because he just has an uncanny ability to see around not just the next corner, but like the next 5 corners. And so thinking and wrestling with that at that level really helped prepare me for, in a lot of ways, and West Point, the distinction of West Point and you know, being an academy who competes at the highest level, FBS football, can line up. And, you know, when we were there, in a bowl game, we beat an SEC team. Like, there's nothing, if you were to put all that into an algorithm, I don't think it ever comes out with that, because there's no one on the other sideline that would have chosen Army over that school, but we still lined up and beat them. So I learned a lot about just true spirit, heart, competitive team spirit, and the importance of culture, especially as a retention tool. So a lot of similarities to here. I think it prepared me in so many ways to think about just, this is complex. There's no playbook for this. The fact that we were, you know, that our basketball team unionized, you know, when we got word of that, there literally was no playbook. Like one talked about unionizing within the past decade, but they never looked at the votes in Northwestern football and so on. But yeah, so I think what it's done is I think first and foremost the alignment and the teamwork required of my role, our entire team in athletics, but also with our President Bylock is a phenomenal leader in his position. Dartmouth so well in today's world, and also our board of trustees. It's really important that we're all aligned, and that's what I would say is, I wouldn't say it's more important, but at this point in time, it's paramount, and we have that at Dartmouth.
Because you're not dealing with the same issues and intensity as you know, your peers earlier today, dealing with agents and really complicated revenue sharing agreements. It just seems to be a little bit simpler. Is that fair to say?
It feels intense. I think I wouldn't say it's simpler, it's different. You know, we have put a high priority on revenue production, and why? Because we want to, in philanthropy, we've landed the biggest gift in Dartmouth athletics history. We're investing all that back into health, wellness support, you know, development of our student athletes. And there's no athletic director in the country that would say we have enough people and money to do all the things we want to do. But it's just, they're different. There are different pressures and considerations in my environment. But I am happy that I have a lot of friends who are mentors, friends who are Power 4 ADs, and I talk to them, and also Power 4 coaches actually in the sports of basketball and football specifically, and they'll say, somebody will have a great game on a Saturday night, and they're in the office on Monday morning saying, I want to renegotiate my deal. I'm glad we don't have to deal with that.
Wow, that's intense.
That's really intense.
So we talked a little bit about revenue generation. What are you doing at Dartmouth to find some more revenue?
Yeah, we've assembled a team to think more. We brought more data-driven decision-making into it. So we've set new records with ticket sales and our sponsorships in each of the past 2 years. We've also maximized our Nike deal. I'm really proud to say that we have a long-standing relationship with Nike. We negotiated an extension that is on par with multiple Big Ten institutions, and we're so fortunate to have that. And we just, again, why it's important. And also we put a high priority in building out our athletics fundraising team because the philanthropy, again, allows us to retain the best coach educators, attract the best coach educators, and also invest in infrastructure, which we've done. A lot of that money that I've talked about, we've reinvested into creating new athletic trainers, strength and conditioning coaches. We're the only Ivy League institution with 2 full-time registered dietitians, sports nutritionists, mental performance, counseling and sports psychology. That's where we can make our difference and our distinction, again, deliver on our promise that we make during the recruiting process.
And talked about the named coaches, and you have a named position.
I do.
Endowed.
Yeah. The Haldeman family. Thank you, Haldeman family. That's been a high priority for us because, again, any athletic department in the country, including ours, sustained income over time is really important. So we're nearing, and a lot of this work started long before I arrived, but it's been a high priority to endow positions. We're nearing, 30 or more positions, and just closed another gift within the last 3 weeks for an assistant coach. And they understand it. We have to get better at it, and something I spend a lot of time thinking about is more strategic and thoughtful about how we can articulate the importance of that to us as an athletics department for sustainable funding over time.
What's the going rate for an endowed coaching position?
Well, if you want to have that conversation, I'm happy to have it. We can have that off camera. And that goes for everybody else. I know there's no Dartmouth grads, but if anybody wants to talk about an endowed position, I'm happy to.
So we talked a little bit about conference expansion earlier today. So much upheaval going on, but the Ivy League is an athletic conference. 8 schools, been around for quite a long time. Do you think there would ever be any expansion? Stanford had to find a new home.
Yeah.
Would they ever add schools?
I actually have an announcement to make today. No, I'm kidding.
I saw your face.
People got cameras out. Look at that. Stanford's new AD, by the way, is a Dartmouth grad, John Donahoe, former Nike CEO. And I'm one of 8 votes, so I can't speak on behalf of the league. I certainly, something that attracted me to the role is certainly the stability of the league and the knowledge and really the embracing of who we are. The Ivy League knows, we know who we are, and as evidenced by everything I've shared today about NIL, our values, all of that. So those decisions would be made well above me by presidents, but I would plan on playing the same other 7 schools next year. I'll put it that way.
Great. And last question. So there was a change in football this year in the Ivy League for one more game. Can you explain what the difference is and why that decision was made? Yeah,
since its inception, the Ivy League was not allowed to participate in the FCS playoffs. So there's FBS, which is, the Notre Dames, the Ohio States, the Duke, and so on, and FCS football championship subdivision. And Ivy League was never allowed to. The presidents voted. I'm so thrilled that our president, Jan Beilock, she's one of the, I'm a very competitive person. I've never met somebody maybe more competitive than me, and she's one, and she certainly embraces the role that athletics can play on our college campus and the educational role. And also, we should strive to win if we're going to do something. So why not test ourselves? That's the promise we make. Football was the last one that didn't have access to a national championship. So the presidents, behind closed doors, I wasn't a part of any of that. But when that decision came down and I called my head coach, it was a day of elation, and our guys on the team are very, very excited about that.